So if you're confused about all the different types of saw blades out there, the different grinds on the teeth, the different number of teeth, the difference between a rip saw and a combination saw or a crosscut saw, stick around. I'm going to try and simplify it for you. Oh, hey, welcome back. Just in the middle of changing blades here. I thought I might do a little video on it. This is probably one of the more important things you can do to get good cut quality. Changing your blades to the right blade for the job. And I've actually got a finer crosscut blade on here. It's a triple chip grind on this. This is 72 teeth, so not as fine as you can definitely go, but with the triple chip grind on this, it's best to have a scoring unit, which I have. I'm lucky enough to have obviously the saw with the scorer on it, and so that blade combined with the scoring unit makes beautiful cuts in the sheet goods, things like the pre-finished birch ply that I was cutting up, or melamine. But it's on to some ripping now, and so I need to go to a different blade because that blade is not going to do it for a rip cut. And so I'm going to a 24 tooth blade. This is a flat top grind on this. That's typical, pretty typical for most pure rip cut blades, I guess. And obviously they will typically have much fewer teeth than a combination blade or a crosscut blade with much bigger gullets. 24, 28 teeth on a 12-inch diameter blade is I guess fairly typical. You could go down as few as maybe 12 or 14 teeth on a 12-inch blade, and that'll obviously give you much more aggressive cutting. The other thing with a rip saw blade is you typically have like the hook angle on the tooth, which is measured if you drew a line between the apex of that tooth through the center of the blade here. The hook angle is this angle here back from the center line, if you like. So this has a very positive hook angle, and it gives you a much more aggressive cut. Like I say, as you go finer in your cross-cutting sort of blades, typically that angle gets less and less, or closer and closer to zero. So what do I do with that there? So I'm just going to put that on and just adjust my riving knife here. I want it nice and close, but not too close. I like like this just below the top of the blade, and I find that way if I take the guard off, I can actually make like a Dado cut or something like that. Now, typically when I've got this type of blade in, I'm literally ripping material roughly to their sizes that I need, and I'm then going to go on and machine or square dress the material. So this is a rough sizing cut, if you will. So you can see it's not a bad cut. There's not a bunch of tear out on the underside, and I was, you know, pushing it. Let's cut something a little bit thinner. Again, this is sort of a rough sizing cut, if you will, but this will cut through it much faster. This blade is actually needs a bit of a sharpen. So you can see here, there's the slightest amount of tear out, but very little. I mean, you're not going to get a ton of tear out here because you are going with the grain. And of course, when we go to square dress this, then any of those little chips are going to come out. What I want to do now, though, is show you here how the height of the blade can change both the cut quality and wear and tear, if you like, on the saw. When we raise the blade up, then the teeth, there's fewer teeth in contact with the wood that you're cutting, and it's easier on the saw. So, but it does make a difference because the hook angle, and depending on the grind, of course, of the teeth, the hook angle in relation to the wood changes. As you go up, it becomes more steep, whereas if you put it down, then you flatten that angle out. So while the cut quality might actually improve, if you like, by lowering the blade, you will increase the heat in the blade and therefore more chance of burning, and it'll be harder on the saw itself. So you can see here the way the tooth is actually hitting the material is, you know, almost flat. But as we go down, like this, to here, all of a sudden, we've actually got basically a negative hook angle. So keep that in mind. The higher you have your blade set for ripping, you'll get a more aggressive cut, essentially. The other benefit is that we'll just go back down here. When the blade is set really low, I'm sure most of you have probably seen this before, but you've got a lot of the forces of the blade are pushing the timber back this way, whereas when we go up in height, like this, as we come through, the teeth are coming down and cutting straight down, and therefore it's much, much easier to push the material through and not be fighting with it coming back. And like I say, a lot less chance of getting burning and stuff like that. Now, the problem now is I've just spent that time putting this blade on. What happens if I need to make it cross-cut? Well, let's just see, shall we? Okay, so that's the first one. That's with the blade up. Okay, so both of these cuts look fairly nice. This side was the side where the blade was lower down, and this side was the side with the blade right up. There's very little, I don't see any difference in the cut quality. One thing I can definitely say though is that I could hear and feel the blade wobbling more with the blade right down, and that's probably just due to the fact that it is not really designed to be cutting with so many of the teeth like that through the board like that. The way it's designed with the hook angle, etc., is that it's up high and the teeth are coming down more on the surface. So I am a little surprised, to be honest, that the cut quality is basically indistinguishable between the two. But it definitely feels smoother to cut with the blade up high. So that's a good one to remember. The other thing that you may or may not have noticed is that I changed the fence over to make these rip cuts to this shorter fence where it's only sort of just past halfway or roughly halfway along the blade. And I do that whenever I'm ripping solid wood, hardwoods or softwoods. It's just a safer practice, and of course always have your blade, your riving knife on, so and blade guard as well. So another very common type of rip blade out there is the glue line rip blade, and that typically has or the ones that I know of anyway, have a triple chip grind. So rakers on every other tooth, and then the ones in between are have a beveled edge on the tops, and typically slightly higher tooth count on those, but very good blades for if you want to make cuts and glue boards up together straight from the rip saw. All right, so next one, let's have a look at say a combination blade here. And this is, I guess you could say, like a jack of all trades and master of none. They do really well at being that jack of all trades. They're typically, for a 12-inch blade, sort of anywhere between, say, 48 and 60 teeth. And with a 10-inch blade, it's probably more like 40 to 50 teeth or something like that. It's important to remember that there is a difference. So when you're talking teeth on a circular saw blade, you have to take into consideration the diameter of the blade. It's not like a bandsaw where you're talking, or a handsaw where you're talking teeth per inch. So these blades, this one has a alternating top bevel, so it's quite a good cross-cut blade as well as a rip blade. It sort of does both relatively well. Doesn't excel if you're trying to cut something really thick like this when you're ripping, and it doesn't really excel at making a cross cut on, say, plywood or something like that. It'll do it, and if you take it fairly easily, you should end up with a relatively good cut. But if you're going to make a lot of those cuts, that's where you're going to go to a fine sizing blade or a cross-cut blade. So yeah, let's excuse me, let's pop that one on and have a look at how that cuts. Always make sure that the plate part of the blade is nice and clean, as well as the what you may call it's on the arbor. Put stuff in there. Okay, so here we go. This is the combination blade, and well, we'll just start off with it down low. That's beautiful, hey? We'll just make a Okay, again, I'm a little surprised because the second cut, this one, actually looks like there's less tear out than the first cross cut. The first cross cut I made much lower, with the blade much lower. So that's a 15-degree hook angle on this, but you know, it's essentially the tooth is contacting the wood at a negative angle, so it's sort of shearing. So with the blade up high, you can see the angle that the tooth hits the top of the material is much flatter than if we drop that down. And you can see now how steep it is and how that has much more of a shearing action. But interestingly enough, that was the cut made with the blade down low, and that's the cut made with the blade up high, and that finish is better. So a little surprising. Yeah, typically I'm not sort of looking for an awesome cut quality with this blade doing this sort of stuff, but it is very interesting to see that. So, all right, so that's the and obviously the rip cut is, yeah, really nice quality here. That was with the blade down low. I guess we could do one with the blade up high. And compare the two cuts. Okay, so that's more like what I would have expected. So the rip cut with the combination blade was cleaner with the blade down low than it was with the blade up high. A little bit opposite what the rip blade was, and that's obviously to do with the hook angle of the teeth. So keep that in mind. That's why typically you would rip with the blade up high. Okay, so another type of blade is a fine cross-cut blade or a fine sizing blade, typically used on like cross-cutting of hard and soft woods, where you're really after a really nice finish, or excuse me, perhaps you don't actually have a scoring blade on your saw, and this type of blade, where if it's say a 10-inch blade, you might have 80 teeth. on this blade. I think this is 96. Yep, 96 tooth. And it too has an alternating top bevel. A lot of the melamine blades, commonly referred to as melamine blades, have similar tooth counts and also a negative hook angle, so they're sort of maybe between 0 degrees, so basically in line through the center of the blade, and then actually tilting back the opposite way by anything up to, say, 6 degrees, 7 degrees, something like that, which gives you a really soft, if you like, shearing cut through it. So if you don't have a scoring blade, then that's the ideal blade if you want to cut things like melamine or something with a hard sort of laminate finish on both sides. So typically not too much of a problem on the top, but the bottom side obviously is where you're going to get your tear out. So that's the blade for that, and I would definitely be running that sort of a little bit lower on your sheet goods. So that's a roundup of the blades for the table saw. But when it comes to blades for the chop saw or the radial arm saw, it's different again. So another couple of really common saws in the shop are a Mitre saw and a radial arm saw. All my lot of Mitre cuts and bevel cuts and stuff I might make on this saw, whereas the radial arm saw is purely for docking of materials to rough lengths. This saw, I run a thin kerf blade in it with an ATB grind, so an alternate top bevel. It has a positive hook angle on the blades. It's probably the most common sort of finishing blade that you would get at your local hardware store, and that's pretty much all I run on that. It's nothing really special. You can run a high ATB. These blades certainly don't last long if you hit a screw or a nail or something, but if you look after them, they're not too bad. So certainly with a high ATB blade, you have to be careful because there's not a lot of meat behind the tooth, if you like, and so they are quite susceptible to break or chip. Just tapping, knocking them, on the saw or something when you're changing them over. So that's typically what I use for that, for all those sorts of cuts. When I bought this saw used, it actually came with this blade on it, and I don't know whether the gentleman ever thought he was going to be ripping material. I know he definitely had a table saw there, so I'm not sure what he was thinking, or if he knew, perhaps he didn't know, right? This blade that he had on it has got quite a positive hook angle, something that you really don't want, especially like on a radial arm saw. What tends to happen with an aggressive hook angle like that is that it will dig into the wood, because it is so aggressive, dig into the wood and want to shoot forward on you, essentially making like a climb cut. The blade that I've got on it now is a 40 tooth, and it's a 0 hook angle tooth on that. That blade is a ATBR. So it has an alternating top bevel with a raker blade or a flat top grind. Every third or fifth blade, tooth, whatever it is. So just make sure if you do have a a radial arm saw in the shop, and you know, all you're doing is using it for cross cutting, then yeah, ensure that you've got the right blade in there. Next thing I want to talk about is Dado sets. So with this set you have the outside blades, which are look more like a traditional saw blade, except that of course the grind is slightly different. And then you have chippers, which then take out the material in between those blades. So if you're doing a lot of shelving where you want to use, install your shelving in a dado groove, then obviously a dado stack is imperative. You really need that. So that's sort of, I think, it when it comes to the different types of blades. So for me personally, my blade arsenal, if you like, consists of, on my 12-inch saw here, consists of blades from 14 teeth to 28 teeth for my rip blades. That you could probably get away with a 28 tooth rip blade, and that will do you fantastically. So that's a must if you're going to rip a lot of hardwoods and softwoods. Then you need to think about what sort of work you're doing on the saw. Are you working with a lot of hardwoods and softwoods, maybe nice furniture and stuff? Then I would go with an alternating top bevel blade, which should give you, and something fairly fine will work really well to give you really, really nice cuts. If you don't have a scoring blade on your saw, and you do a lot of work with melamine or some other hard laminated sheet goods, then a high ATB blade will probably be the one that you want. Now, of course, the thing about a lot of blades and making sure that you put the right blade in for the job is to reduce the amount of heat and burning and stuff. And what you will get when you do have too fine a blade in, or you're just really pushing things, is you'll get a lot of heat, a lot of burning, and a lot of gumming up of materials on the blades. And as soon as that happens, if the blade gums up a lot with the resin build-up and stuff from the wood, then you're going to get really poor cut quality. Doesn't matter how slow you go, how high up or how low down you put the blade, the cut quality is going to be severely reduced because of that. So it's really, really important to keep your blades clean. There's so many things out there about blade cleaning. Personally, I just use warm water, and I have used blade cleaner from time to time, but I typically always just use water, warm water in the laundry sink in the bathroom here. I'll put the blade in warm water, soak it for a couple of minutes, and then use a stiff bristled brush. And that tends to get that gum off. Doesn't matter whether it's been really resinous pine or something that I've been cutting, the water will take it off 9 times out of 10 and probably 99 times out of 100. So the next time you need to clean your blades, try warm water, hot water, and just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then try the way you've always done it. I actually pretty much have 2 of all of the different types of blades that I use day to day. And I have 2 because when I do send them off to get sharpened, I need to be able to still use that same type of blade until it comes back. They are expensive, or can be expensive, but in my opinion, it's better if you do this either for a living. Well, if you do it for a living, you got to buy good quality blades. Cheaper ones just won't last. The tungsten carbide is not as good a quality in a cheap blade as it is in a good blade, and that's part of the reason why they are cheap, right? But you'll find too, even for the hobbyist, right, if you spend the money on a good blade, not only can they be sharpened multiple times, but also they'll tend to hold a sharp edge much longer than the cheaper blades. So at the end of the day, you're going to probably pay less. So if you can afford it, do that. If you're on a really, really tight budget and you don't do this for a living, it's just a hobby, then my advice would be either buy a couple of reasonably good quality combination blades if you can, or better yet, get, you know, a rip blade and a crosscut blade and change them out when you need to, and you'll get way better quality cuts. It'll be way easier on your saw, and yeah, you'll thank me for it. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has cleared up some things. If you feel like there's some things that I've missed, please make a comment below so that others can hopefully learn from that. There's many other different types of blade geometry, or tooth geometry if you like, on blades that definitely are more specialist sort of grinds, things for non-ferrous metals and the like. So if you need to do something specific for, you know, if you need to be cutting something specific that's out of the ordinary, go to a good reputable saw blade manufacturer wherever you are, and talk to them or give them a call, and they'll definitely be able to point you in the right direction and get you the right blade for the material that you need to cut. Don't forget, if you like this video, please remember to hit like, and if you're not already subscribed, please do. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.